Okay, we're going to talk about time editing as a technology for well-being and evolution. And as a little bit of context, let's take a look at evolution. So what is evolution? We have an unconscious evolutionary whole, an ecology, a totality of all that is in its way because it's pre-language, it's pre-conscious. It's an interconnected whole that is what it is. It doesn't become something through the lens of human consciousness until we descend out of the oneness, out of the garden, out of the whole, into the distinctions, into the polarity of language. And through language, human consciousness. So as soon as we take the one and divide it into two, and then give this a label, number one, and this a label, number two, and then decide that number one is better than number two, and 2.1 is better than 2.0. Now we've got a direction. We've, in a sense, fabricated evolution through language. And what language is, and what human consciousness is a heuristic model through language of reconstructing the whole. And so if you look at the sphere, at the original one, before it's refracted into the masculine expression of particle, line, and distinction, you have grace. Now, once you introduce a system through which to view the one via language, you now have a system, and the system is never perfect and it's less graceful. So here would be a typical example. Let's say we move from polarity, black and white, to trilarity, where we have a triangle, basically. We're taking the infinite distinctions of ecology, of the one, of the feminine, and we're starting off with a system of black and white, polarity, cutting the one in half, and then we're becoming a little bit more complex. We're going into a triangle. Now, the movement, this movement as we descend into language and then iterate, is a movement towards greater and greater complexity, leading to higher and higher consciousness. What are we talking about? We're talking about a higher resolution of consciousness. So this is the same journey as we all went through with cell phone screens. 480p pixels per square inch used to be amazing, right? Instead of 220 or whatever it was. So there was a doubling of pixelation. Now, as the pixels double, and now we're up to 4K and even going to 8K, although the eye doesn't seem to be able to tell the difference. As we're moving up in distinctions per square inch, so to speak, we are increasing consciousness. And the viewing experience of that is a higher quality image. This image that you're watching is 60 frames a second with full HD. And so it's got an update rate of 60 snaps per second. And that's twice as crisp, right, than 30 frames a second. So, that's the movement in evolution of technology. Now, the movement of evolution in consciousness via language is that you move from a 3-point system to what? A 4-point system. And then a 4-point system to an 8-point system. Now, as we add distinctions to the model of reality, we're not talking about reality. We're talking about our model of reality. And with a TV image, we're not talking about reality either. Pixels are not reality. It's a model of reality. And that's what language is, a model of reality. In order for us to be conscious of reality through the medium of thought. So that's our movement through reality. And so we're moving towards greater and greater complexity. Now, as we move to greater and greater complexity, we move towards grace. Why? Well, you can imagine driving a car with, let's take the circle, we divide it in half. Now we have two half moons, and you put one on one car or one wheel, and you put another one like that on the other wheel. And now you've got, a very bumpy ride. Now, as you move that towards a triangle, it's a little bit less bumpy than just half. If you move it towards a square, it's even less bumpy. If you put, a 200-point wheel where you have, 200 different spokes going out symmetrically from the center, it gets smoother and smoother. If you have 1,000,000 points, it gets even smoother. So this is the journey towards grace, a graceful ride through consciousness, through life. It's a movement towards complexity, a movement towards distinctions. Now, we have the feminine, the one, and then we have the masculine, which is kind of the refracted code, the mathematics that generate the one through the system of consciousness, through the system of language, through the system of numbers we're using to generate reality. And so if we look at reality as an equation, the present moment is an equation that has a future and a past. So the present moment, if you ask a sociologist, for example, to look at a particular cult or culture and say, okay, here we have America today. Well, the sociologist, when asked, well, why is America the way it is today, will not look around, at the sun or something like that. The sociologist will go through a series of historical events, and that's called a historical equation. They will say, well, there was this thing going on here with the Native Americans, and then this event happened here. And there were 38 people in this event and 27 people in this event, and these people voted this, and these people chose this, and then this happened. Now, after this happened, based on that, this happened, and then this happened. And you will get to the present moment. Here we are. But the present moment is not only defined and confined to the past equation, the complex variables of mental, emotional, and physical energy that leads us to this moment. The present is also composed of a future equation. And all you have to do to experience that, because your present moment is composed through a synergy of your anticipated future and your experienced past, which is then linked to the anticipated and probable futures for the larger population and species, and similarly with the past. Let's say you're here watching this video. Now you have a future in mind. It may not be conscious, but let's say your future is that no one invades your house and you have a quiet evening. The neighbors are so annoying with this TV noise, etc. But, other than that, you've got this will happen and this will happen and this will happen. And based on that, the fact that it's happened many times, you might be a little bit bored, or you might be relaxed, or whatever it is, based on a projected future. Now, based on that projected future, you feel exactly the way you feel right now. However, if I was to tell you that in exactly 5 minutes, there will be a knock on the door, only it will not be a neighbor. It will be a member of the Israeli security force, the Mossad, or the Mossad. And they're going to ask you 3 important questions. If you answer this way, they will shoot you. If you answer this way and then proceed within 30 seconds to do this and make this phone call, your reality will pivot this way. You see, now you have a new anticipated future. And if you believe that future rather than the future you've been believing up until this point, your physiology will change instantly. And with it, your physiology, your thoughts, your feelings, that's your reality. Your physiology, your thoughts, your feelings, that's what your personal reality is. And the future affects that as much as the past. It's a projected future. It's a believed future. For example, if you're about to get married and you absolutely believe that your spouse will have lots of children with you, will harm each of those children traumatically and severely, will endanger your life, and will betray and leave you in $10 million of debt. If you believe that, your feeling about the wedding changes. Probably your choice about the wedding changes. The future, as a projected equation, as an expectation, and the past, and there's, of course, a relationship, because a lot of the time what we do is we take the past and rightly or wrongly, we project it onto the future. And this is where the complexity of consciousness is so important, because a very crude way of projecting the past onto the future would be to say, I met a man, he wasn't very nice to me. I met a new man, that was a man, this is a man. I don't think this new man will be very nice to me. So that's taking the past man unedited and just basically saying all men are. You can do the same with women, all men are, all women are, etc. You just take whatever it was that was in the past and you project it in the future. I met a black man who was like this. I met a white man who was like this. I met I saw a dog, and the dog was mean to me, so I don't like dogs. And the same simplicity would be there. I saw a dog, he was nice to me, so I like dogs. And this is called simple thinking. There's no distinction other than I had an event, this is how I felt about it. So that's how I feel about all such dogs, men, white people, black people, women, etc. And that's what we tend to call racism. It's a simple form of thinking. And it's based on just transposing the past into the future. Now, because everything that happens in the present is connected with both the past and the future, there is a lot that we can learn about the relationship. There's things to learn. And this gets, back to that journey of evolution. Evolution is the journey from the unconscious garden of total, complete, unconscious existence where we are all one. Out of the garden into the knowledge of what? Good and evil. Polarity. Into the knowledge of distinctions. It's called human consciousness. It's called language. Up and down. And of course, up is good, right? And down is bad. Black and white, right? And of course, white is good. This is one of the roots of racism. If you're in a simple thinking where half of the universe is good and half of it's bad, it's called Christianity. If you break the whole into two and then condemn half of all that is to some nether place, some curse, some slander, that's bad basically, and half of it to this is good. Well, you then of course start a war. You've cut the world in half, and now have pitted half against half, and you have a tremendous amount of suffering. Whether it's unnecessary or not could be debatable, but you definitely have suffering if you take your body and cut it in half, and then if your limbs can even move, you try and pit one against the other. It's going to be difficult. So anyway, you've got the most violent paradigm possible, where you've got black and white and in battle with one another. But as you move in human consciousness and evolution towards grace, you start introducing more and more complex shapes. And as you do so, the circle starts, if you do so symmetrically, the circle starts to have more and more of its circle restored to it. As you symmetrically, with balance, create a language of distinctions, slowly the wheel now viewed through human consciousness, which is language, starts to emerge again. That's the journey of evolution. To go from the unconscious perfection of the one to the conscious catastrophe of polarity and cut, and then gradually to return to grace to the point where a computer will generate a sphere with as many as 256 million dots to recreate the sphere. The color wheel is one, of course. It's all one color refracted out of light and darkness. But a computer will generate 256 million different distinctions. It'll take the color wheel basically and somewhat arbitrarily divide it into a range of reds and oranges. These are distinctions. They're not real. They're just what we use to label what's real. We're moving towards reality. So that's the journey we're on. Now, when you're dealing with the particle, when you're dealing with the Yang expression of reality, you're dealing in the domain of systems, lines, mathematics, particles. You're in the domain of recreating the symmetry of an ecological one with dots and lines. Now, when you're doing that, you are in the realm of imperfection, because the perfection of the one can never fully be achieved through the lens of human consciousness, which is operating on the pixelated system of language. So you're moving towards grace. You're moving towards perfection. The sphere, the totally symmetrical sphere, is the ultimate expression of grace, and you're moving towards that by softening the rough edges and adding complexity to the system. This is the journey towards grace. Now, the present moment, for most of us who experience it, is an imperfect expression of the mathematics of the past and the future. It's a little bit too hot. The lemonade is a little bit too sweet. There's that background noise. Is that the neighbor mowing their lawn? Does the dog have to bark every time someone drops something off on the doorstep? Or why is it that my girlfriend is clingy and possessive when I'm talking with someone else, and when I've got all the time in the world for her and then sitting at home, she completely ignores me? I mean, oh my goodness, why can't it be the other way? Why, when I'm available, can't we do this? And then when I'm out and, busy, engaged with somebody else, she's playing video games or doing that. Well, why? Why can't it be like that? Why can't it be more perfect? And so in order to move in the direction of grace, of well-being, we have to change the mathematics. So the degree of suffering that is present in the present, globally, in a family system and in an individual psyche, is a reflection of the complexity and symmetry of the mathematics going behind and going forward. And the purpose of suffering within this paradigm is to clue us in on where more distinction, more grace, more symmetry, more balance can be added. Because if we have a very complex system like in the West, we do a lot to develop people's minds. So over here, we've got all these reading the classics, doing this, studying algebra, studying calculus, studying, making notes of historical dates. So we've got lots and lots of mental distinctions. And then over on this other side, the feminine side, you talk about how many feelings have you had today? I don't know. What's the difference between a feeling and an emotion? I don't know. If you want to turn hate into joy, what are the core ingredients in hate, and how does that get I don't know. So complete emotional illiteracy, complete trivia literacy. We've got massive amounts of trivia, and so we're driving on one of those awkward wheels where it's going to be a bumpy ride because we're off balance. Now, the degree of suffering, more people commit suicide in the United States than die in car accidents. This is an incredible accomplishment in asymmetry. It's almost unheard of for mammals to kill themselves in a luxurious environment. And yet, we do it all the time in this cult. It is a masterful accomplishment in asymmetry. And how do you get that asymmetry? Well, you overemphasize the masculine, you sublimate the feminine, you elevate the masculine, and you shame the feminine. And you get psyches that apologize for having feelings, apologize for having emotional intensity, and talk about, oh, that's an interesting idea, as if learning what elephants do on a Sunday afternoon in a completely different country is more relevant than what your partner's feeling that you have no idea about, or what to do about it if you knew. And so this is how you get asymmetry, and this is how you generate massive amounts of unnecessary suffering. The same suffering you'd experience if you put half moons on 4 car wheels and then drove it at 60 miles an hour. I mean, no one could tolerate those rides. And so we apply symmetry when it comes to driving. We don't put half moons on train wheels, but we put half moons on the education template. We overemphasize the mind and shame and diminish the heart. We teach the science of the mind. We teach the cult shame of the heart. We pay our Google engineers and we leave our single mothers with zero parental literacy to raise the future of the culture. It is insane. When you have asymmetry in a journey, you create pain, unnecessary pain. And the pain is the teacher. About what? About symmetry. Because as you move towards grace, as you move towards symmetry and balance, the pain disappears. So the present moment contains a certain amount of well-being and a certain amount of pain. The well-being teaches you about the balance and symmetry that you've achieved to date. The pain teaches you about the asymmetry and the imbalance and the simplicity that you've achieved to date. And all systems are imperfect. It's a matter of degrees. So that's what's going on in evolution. Now, because the present moment is an equation of the past and an equation of the future, you can change the experience by changing any of these digits. Like if I go to the past here and I see I see the 7 here, so I delete the 7 and I put in a 10. What changes? The present moment changes. If I go to the future and we delete the Mossad coming in 5 minutes and we have the Mossad coming in 1 year, we delete the 8 and we put a 160. What changes? The present moment. There isn't so much heart elevation. There's more room for incredulity. You're pulling my leg. Now, if it's coming in 5 minutes and then you hear the knock on the door, you may err on the side of, what if it is? And if it was, let's get moving. So the present moment changes your reality, which is your heuristic model of reality, changes based on the past that you are aware of, that you focus on, and based on the future that you project, that you imagine. So what is useful about the present moment's suffering? Well, it tells you where your past and your future are off. If you were traumatized as an infant and you carry PTSD and you feel like a terrified 2-year-old in the moment, that's telling you what's off, what's asymmetrical about your culture, about your family system, and consequently about your body and psyche. Because it takes an entire cult to produce parents capable of systematically traumatizing their children, not realizing what they're doing, and then doing nothing about it. Now, if you just delete the present moment, you just cross it out and create a new present. What's the problem? Well, it's kind of the same problem that you deal with in a business. So in a business, you also have, if you're on the stock market, for example, the stock is going to assess, or the market is going to assess your business based on what? past performance and its trends, the present, but just as importantly in the future. I'm a big Tesla shareholder, and believer in the company. And most of Tesla's value is not coming from the past. Most of Tesla's value is coming from a belief, a projection in what? The future. When Tesla grows to 30 million cars a year, when full self-driving is fully operational, when there's a fleet of robo-taxis, when the battery storage of the Megapacks is utilized in half the grids around the world, then, Tesla is going to be making lots of money. Therefore, today, what? The share is more valuable because of the future. Now, if you take away the future from Tesla, the stock plummets by perhaps 70%. So 70% of Tesla's valuation is coming from the future, but it's also coming from the past. The future is somewhat based on the past. Elon has a track record of overcoming incredible odds a couple of years late, again and again and again. And so the market is anticipating that Elon Musk will overcome incredible odds a couple of years late. And the price, and that's being forecast into the future. Now, you could just feel great buying a company with a terrible past and that has no likely future, but you just pretend. Let's just pretend, a scam artist comes to your house and you, want to invest in what? Moon rocks. They're going to be worth millions, right? Here's a moon rock. There's only so many on the planet. Buy one, only $1,000. Hold it, put it in a safe. In 20 years, moon rocks will be the next big thing. Well, if you believe that, you will be very excited. You're already a millionaire. But if your present moment is unsustainable, meaning you change your present moment, you're all excited, you $1,000 poorer, and you have a moon rock in the safe. Well, as reality diverges from your projected reality, all your excitement flummoxes. You go from being elated and feeling superior. You figured out the whole moon rock, nobody else understood. And now you feel like a fool. I was ripped off. So now that excitement and buoyancy goes to rage, and those bastards selling moon rock, if I see them. And so then the new present. So the present is unsustainable. It's based on a false equation about the future. It's not in a future that actually converges with reality. It's not a useful future to project. And the past, you learn that, so-and-so said they were so good and they've always done this, but then you realize that there was this deleted number. This 100 loss here. They did make this, and they did make this, but this number is deleted. So once you add in the 100, then the present collapses in value. A bit of data was omitted. So just feeling great about the present based on dissociating from the probable future and the probable past is a shortcut. It's called insanity or dissociation or rowing without both oars, various things. It is a shortcut to feel great. You can feel absolutely great if you rewrite history and rewrite the future and ignore the data. But you have to diverge from more people, and you have to spend energy then to obscure the data that challenges your equation. However, and there's a good reason for this, because what the present moment is reflecting is your current level of intelligence. Now, your intelligence is the following. Energy divided by well-being. Or how efficiently do you convert time, money, and natural resources to sustainable well-being? How efficiently do you do that? If you do that well, then you are more intelligent. If you do that poorly, if you double the efficiency with which you turn energy into sustainable well-being, you've just doubled your intelligence. The ultimate metric of intelligence in a reality in which everyone wants to feel sustainably better and everyone wants to avoid feeling chronically worse is how successfully, how reliably, and how efficiently do you do that? That is the measure of your intelligence. So if you can change the present and the future to generate more sustainable well-being while consuming less energy, you're moving in an evolutionary direction, in the direction of the intelligence continuum. So that's good. And so how is it, when is it fine? Because, there are some pasts. Some of us are born into such horrible scenarios that if you add up the data, there's no way to have a good future. And there's no way to have a good present. If you have a horrible past leading to a nightmarish future, and you're in the middle, in the present, you are living a nightmare. That's what the numbers add up to. It's like a business. You sell socks, and every sock costs you $10. And the best price you've ever got for a sock is $1, which means that every sock you sell loses $9 plus sales commission. So nobody wants to invest in your company. You've got a miserable company. And if the reality is nobody ever will buy a sock for more than $1, and your sock prices are just going to keep going up, meaning what you pay for a sock to sell it for $1, and it's been going on for a while, you're in hell as far as the goal of making money is concerned. Every single day you go deeper and deeper and deeper into debt, into failure as a business. You have a sick company, and that's your equation. And so to feel good about that, or to pretend that we only buy socks for 50 cents when in fact we've been paying $10 for them for years, and we're in more debt than we know what to do with, is destructive. So what I'm getting at is the technique that I'm about to work with and share with you can be delusional and destructive if you do not learn the equations, the message of the past and of the probable future. If you do not learn the message and take the gifts of the imperfect system that is the past, leading to the future you are likely to experience, this technique is not going to be helpful. It's going to be a form of delusion and insanity. And so what do? You start off by analyzing the past. So you look at this 10, you see where this 10 came from. It came from somewhere. And you see what happens when 9 gets added to it. And then you see, these are big numbers when you see that they're multiplied by 100. So this thing is a multiplier. This variable in your life is a multiplier. So if you could reduce this to 5, then you'd only have 1,400 instead of 1,900. That's a pretty big difference. So it's a big deal to work with these numbers here. So you learn how one thing leads to another and generates the present moment. And then you look at it and you say, okay, so I feel this amount of suffering and this amount of well-being. A lot of it seems to be this 10 here. You know, Joey down the road didn't have this 10. He had a 2. So Joey had a 2, and he's doing all right, because 2 plus 9, 11 times 100, 1100 is a lot different than 1900. And so that's what's leading to this. Now, if you believe, and beliefs are a model of reality, but some beliefs are more useful than others. If you believe that there's a purpose or a potential in your existence, in reality, then you could say that my job is to learn the imperfections of the status quo, of my cult, of my family system, my cult system, my national system, my ecological system, my garbage system, my phone system, to learn the imperfections and make them better. Have a more perfect system leading to what? A more perfect present, towards growth, towards evolution. Well, once you understand how and why the present feelings, thoughts, beliefs, and sensations are being generated from this past equation here, leading to this likely future, equaling this amount of pain and this amount of well-being, and this is why it works. You understand the psychology of, childhood development. You understand this. See, now you can say, if I had had a parent like this that wasn't afraid of their feelings, if I had had a single teacher who welcomed me telling them this and that important detail rather than getting frightened that I would get them fired and stuff, then I would have had this present. Aha. So that's how you iterate the system. So the use of the past equation is as a learning technology to see what generates the present. However, once you have learned that, number one, noted it, and seen the probable future of what's likely to happen down the road, once you've done that, you are now in a position to start editing things because you can. And because the brain cannot tell the difference between a vividly imagined experience in the future or the past and a vivid imagination of the future and the past. Meaning you're not actually looking at the past ever. You're looking at a vivid memory construct in the memory of the body and the brain. And see, here's why this is such a powerful thing. If you've been given crack cocaine at age 2, if you've been sexually molested by multiple people sold for prostitution from age 6 to 10, if you've been traumatized and shamed and raised in an emotionally illiterate culture, if you didn't receive enough touch as an infant and you were, left in one of those orphanages that didn't touch you, you've got a very high probability of shortened lifespan, lower emotional intelligence, high distrust, weak relationships, blah, blah, blah. You have a very high odds of an absolutely miserable present. But can you edit the present by editing the past and the future? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. Every time you remember that horrible feeling at the orphanage, that horrible moment of being embarrassed, your physiology relives that in the present. And unfortunately, because the future is highly influenced by the present, it's an unfortunate reality in our cult that people usually treat you in the end the way you treat yourself. And so if you feel small and unloved and unvaluable, and treat yourself as small, unloved, and unvaluable because you've got 300,000 events in the past all pointing to that, well, then you've got a situation where people are statistically, in the future, more likely to treat you poorly and with low value. And if you treat yourself with a great deal of value and dignity and create a wonderful reality for yourself in the present, people will tend to treat you with more respect and help you create a wonderful reality in the present and in the future. Is it fair? No, it's mathematics. It's an equation. So, here's where you have things like fake it till you make it. That can work. But what we're going to do with this technique, having learned what? It's as much about the cult as ourselves. We're a member of our cult. We're indoctrinated into our cult at birth. So it is a cult phenomena. We are actually teaching the cult the consequences of its current imbalances and asymmetries so that the cult can evolve. I mean, that's usually whether it's the way law evolves. Some horrible thing happens with the current law. Everyone is outraged. And then a new law gets passed that mitigates that somewhat. And that's the evolution of law. And it's the same thing in cult dynamics and all of this. So here's how you edit your present. So first of all, you go back into the past. You take that 10 there. You enter that moment in a visceral presence. Now you bring new variables in, new data. Where? Through imagination. This is the one, it's called printing money. It's wonderful. Because your body cannot tell the difference between something vividly imagined and emotionally believed and felt and sensed. You can go back into this 10 that you've decided you want to get to a 2. And you create a new script. How do you do it? You go back to this part of you that's living this 10 of misery here. Say, hello there. I'm your future self. You've got more resources now. I've got powerful access to physiology and memory, etc. And I can change your reality. What would you like? What past self, what would you like to have here? Well, let's say they want a 0. Okay. So what would that look like? What would the perfect 0 look like? Well, it would sound like this. It would smell like this. Rather than being lonely and isolated, you'd have hot babes driving by in a convertible and saying, "Hey, come on in. You look so handsome. Let's go for a drive. I've always wanted to meet someone like you." It's like, oh, does that sound good to your adolescent? Does that sound good? So what time frame are you seeking to edit? And what does that adolescent want? That would completely change their experience of reality. And you give it to them in imagination. You feel it, you see it, all the senses, this, that, how's that? What about this? What if we change the music? What if we change this? Okay, right, you got that. Now what does it feel like? What does our body feel like? And you pump that with intensity, with vividness, with imagination. And that's my past at age 10 at this moment in time, at age 12 at this moment in time. It's a new past. It's an edited equation. Now, the more energy you pump into that bit in the time sequence, now we've got 0 plus 9 times 100 equals 3 equals a new present moment. You feel differently coming out of that meditation, that imagination, that editing process. You go back again the next day. You take this 9. How does that feel? I don't like it at all. Why? Okay, I get it. That was a horrible 9. Let's take that. What would you like? How about a 1? How about a 1? Okay, now we've got 1 times 100. It's getting much better. So pain is going down, well-being is going up. Now, when you edit the past, edit the mathematical equation that's leading to the present, your self-image changes because your image is in many ways a cumulative summation of that past. And so as the past changes, the present changes. Now, as the past and the present change, what else changes? The future changes, of course. You know, if a company that's selling for $3 a share, you go back into the past where they lost money this quarter, they lost money the quarter, and you change that and they made hundreds of millions of dollars per quarter, what happens to the share price? It goes up by hundreds of dollars. So, the future changes as you change the past and the present. And the confidence of being able to change things also changes. Because it's all a physiological, psychological construct of what will happen in the future. Now, we have an influential role, meaning when we change the past viscerally and believably in such a way that we get the date, that we make the sale, that we connect easily with other people, and we believe and step into that feeling, that image, we become more consistent with other people. Like, for example, it's very hard for another person to say, oh, I really, really want to get and spend time with Joe. You know, it's like, Joe is so cool. I just really, really, really want to spend time with Joe. You know, everyone wants to spend time with Joe. He's a cool dude, you know, this, that, I just want to do that. It's hard for someone to say that, to step into that script, if Joe hates himself, if Joe, because he hates himself, mumbles, if Joe, because he's ashamed, looks down, if Joe hurriedly walks away in case someone criticizes him, every time someone says, hey, Joe, he hurriedly walks off, they're going to say, this doesn't fit the script of really wanting to hang out with the coolest person around. And so what they're going to do is they're going to change their script to say, oh yeah, I don't want to hang out with Joe. But Joe is a very strong nucleus. How Joe behaves, and how does Joe behave? He behaves based on what his expectation is on the future, which is based on the past. And so you can edit the past, and then you can go into the future, and you can say, you know, what I really want here, I don't want 160. I want 3,000. Now, what would have to happen in the present and the past for this to end up as 3,000? Well, this would have to go here. This would have to go here. This number would have to go, we'd have to change from a minus to a times. That'll do it. This one thing, minus to times. Now, how can we do that? Maybe we get 3 times the employees. That could do it. Or we develop a 3 times better app to do this task. That would do it. Now we got to 3,000. Now that's an exciting future. I feel great about the present because I feel great about the future. I feel great about the future because I feel great about the past. I feel great about the past because I invented it, because I rewrote it. And you can say it's cheating, and it is. Or you can say it's winning, and it is. Or you could say it's fun, and it is. The trick is in understanding, the dynamic. If you have not learned what that past equation was teaching you, you may not let it go because you still have something to learn and understand about it. But if you've learned it, understood it, forgiven it, let go of it, made the changes needed, made the adjustments, brought in more symmetry, you had all this stuff over here, you figured out where the paint, you start bringing in this stuff. Now you don't need that past as a teacher. You've learned what it had to teach you. The past is a teacher, a very patient teacher that teaches you how to get to the current present moment. The future is an exciting teacher that teaches you how to get to the present moment that you're thinking and feeling. So, if the larger cult needs to learn a message about homelessness, for example, well, someone else can be homeless. Your past should have left you homeless for life. But you changed this, you changed this, you changed this, and now you're not homeless, you're what? Happily married, making millions of dollars, happily trekking the mountains of Tibet, happily teaching high school kids online as a nomad traveler in your decked out tiny house or van. You're doing something that you like. The key thing to understand is the present is a summation of the probable future and the past that is believed in and contained in the body memory. You can change both through visualization, through belief. And as you come into the present as a highly engaged, highly energized person, as you come into the present, people take your cue, their cue, off of you. Have fun, and thanks for watching.